Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 163. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has liked, shared, commented, subscribes to the show. All your support, suggestions for guests helps us bring on more guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also, want to take this time to thank our sponsors. Samson Equipment provides first-class weight rooms and has earned an exceptional reputation of providing the finest quality, design, and customer service. Being a direct manufacturer, the team at Samson brings full customization capabilities and not only branding, but in custom equipment needed to execute your next project. From barbells, plates, dumbbells, benches, flooring, storage, racks, and much more, Samson equipment is durable and made to order from premium grade materials, all built from scratch, start to finish. Samson equipment provides professional weight room solutions for all your strength and conditioning needs. See the Samson standard for yourself and learn more at samsonequipment.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Cerberus is an organization that truly puts the athlete first and actively works toward providing the best quality gear at an affordable price. Owned and operated by active lifters, Cerberus Strength has quickly evolved into a global brand symbolizing quality and trust. So if you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and strongman equipment, be sure to check out CerberusStrength.com and use promo code strength_game to receive an extra 10% off your next order. Also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. The kilt is a tradition dating back centuries. Worn by nobles, military, and fashionistas, the kilt has been through it all, at times banned and at other times celebrated. For over 25 years, Sport Kilt has been striving to perfect their version of the Scottish classic to create the ultimate garment of fashion and function. Check out the full line of kilts and join the kilt life at sportkilt.com and be sure to use promo code TSG to save on your next order. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Matt Gebert. Matt is an assistant football strength conditioning coach at the University of Mississippi. Gebert joined the Ole Miss staff in 2026 after serving a similar position for football at Auburn University for the 2025 season. Prior to that, he was an assistant director for football strength conditioning at the University of Arizona from 2024 to 2025. Before Arizona, Gebert logged stints at Indiana University in 2023, Stanford from 2020 to 2022, Florida International from 2017 to 2020, and Purdue from 2015 to 2017. Additionally, he garnered experience as an intern coach with the Jacksonville Jaguars for the 2014 season, at Columbia University in the summer of 2013, and Rutgers University in the spring of 2013. Gebert was also a graduate assistant strength conditioning coach on the staff at Minnesota University from 2013 to 2014. In addition to his coaching responsibilities, Gebert is currently completing his PhD in sports science from Liberty University. A former college football player at Western Connecticut State University from 2009 to 2013, Gebert is an avid lifter and still very active in the weight room himself. Like I said, I'm excited to have him on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Matt Gebert. What's going on, everybody? Today I'm joined by Coach Matt Gebert. How you doing today, Coach?
Doing great, man. Appreciate you having me on.
No, I appreciate you coming on. I know we got talking a little bit ahead of time, like at the time of this recording. You got the 4-day weekend kind of coming up, last minute preparation before all the Ole Miss football players are back and you guys get into the thick of that summer season. So I appreciate your time today, and I know we're going to dive into all things training for those guys coming up, kind of your career, like what your training looks like, as well as a lot of speed development stuff, because that's kind of your bread and butter. But before we kind of get into the X's and O's and a little bit of your philosophy, how'd you really kind of get started up in strength game, lifting? Like, what'd you kind of play growing up before you got to like college ball into like kind of what you're doing now with the barbell?
Yeah, I think like most coaches, I was a failed athlete in a lot of senses. Played every sport you could think of really growing up. I'm from New York City, so basketball is huge. Like basketball was my favorite sport growing up. And so I was playing basketball, got to high school. Guys were like 6'6". I'm like, maybe I should try this football thing out. Then I'm playing football in college, get to college. The D linemen are running like 4.5s. I'm like, maybe I should try this coaching thing out. So um, we just got into it. But I mean, as long as I can remember, I've been kind of obsessed with two things: sports and then the science of performance. Right? It started as an athlete. You're trying to figure out the best ways to get stronger, faster, in better shape to help yourself. And then that obviously that's shifted now as a coach trying to help our athletes.
So you kind of knew like off the get-go, like you could kind of see the writing on the wall, see compare yourself. Every high school, college athlete starts to do that, like see the guys that are successful on the field, on the court, whatever the sport is, and start to like kind of compare to yourself, like, oh man, my frame is I'm probably not gonna be able to dunk very easily. Like these guys are huge and they're running fast. Like you started to see the writing on the wall, but then you started using performance as a way to like play catch up. So, like from the get-go, as you were in there, did you know coaching was going to be something that you wanted to shift towards, like understanding that, hey, I can get better, I can compete with these guys even if I don't have the size and like the God-given ability, but like I can train my ass off and use this as a tool.
Yeah, I think I was kind of a unique situation because I knew I wanted to be a strength coach probably when I was like 17, 18 years old. Um, a friend of mine, Keith Ferrara, who he's the head strength coach at Adelphi University now. He was a year older than me. We played ball together, and he was a freshman in college. I was still in high school, and he came back, and we were lifting together. And I said, "What's your major? What are you majoring in?" And he said, "Exercise science." And I was like, "What are you going to do with that?" And he said, "I want to be a strength coach in college." And I was like, that's a full-time job? Like people are getting paid to do that? Like he's like, yeah, we have a strength coach. So once I heard that, I was like, that's what I want to do. So I kind of had it mapped out in my head. Now, as you're growing up, you start thinking about other things, but I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do for a while now. So I think that helped me out because I had a little bit of a leg up and I knew where I wanted to go with it.
Okay, yeah, that's super fortunate too because I think a lot of coaches don't learn. I mean, nowadays they kind of know where some of the blue blood places are that have like really good exercise science programs or like GAs and they know going into it by freshman year, like, hey, I want to be a strength coach. I want to work with these teams. I want to be in this set and setting. But that's awesome to have like someone just even a year ahead of you that points you in the right direction. Because honestly, I think the best thing about it is like you don't waste your time and you can
Yeah.
dive into it. I think a lot of interns get into it and they start seeing like the writing on the wall. They just don't really want to do it until they actually get their feet wet. You knew you wanted to do it. You went to school for it and started like right in that college. But you touched on so many different like avenues like to get to Ole Miss, and we don't have to go through the whole bio and everything, but you went and you got some experience interning in some places and then grad assistant as well as Minnesota. Like how important, even though you knew you wanted to be in it, was it for you to get more experience other than just be at your undergrad and actually branch out and see how other programs, other coaches, other sports kind of operate?
Yeah, I think you have one frame of reference as an athlete, and then you get a different point of view as a coach on the other side of things. And there's a lot of things you don't think about as an athlete, right? Like you just show up and you practice, or you just show up and you lift, and you don't really understand what goes on behind the scenes and all the preparation it takes to get to those lifts, runs, practices, games, right? So seeing that other side of it was huge. You know, I interned my senior year in college, my last semester at Rutgers, was commuting back and forth. So that was kind of my first introduction as a coach on the college side of things. I'd worked in the private sector a little bit, um, but that really opened my eyes to seeing it from a different lens for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely different too when you're still embedded in it and you've got the lens, like you said, of an athlete, and you don't get to kind of see the preparation side or figure out like the nuts and bolts of why stuff is added into the program. You just kind of get the finished product, and then your job is really just to execute. Were you kind of using that time when you were an athlete to kind of pick their brain, or you just like at that point is it just too much like you're in the sport? Because I've seen some athletes like be able to do it and like still play, but then like try to volunteer. Like when I was an undergrad and when I was a grad student, it was D3 football and like D3 sports um, on my side. So you could kind of have one foot in, one foot out, or you could just use the off season because it's a volunteer period for those that don't realize like Division 3 is completely voluntary. Um, but do you think like you just had to stay focused on football and then football season's over, now I can dive deep into coaching?
I was always kind of looking forward to the off season because I was always kind of doing my own research and what I want to do or what I would do in this situation. And I was reading a lot of Elite FTS at the time and T Nation and learning from guys just from a distance, guys like Joe DeFranco and Buddy Morris, and reading any article, watching any YouTube video that I could get my hands on. As an athlete. And then once you start realizing, okay, I definitely do want to coach, then you start to think about it a little bit, like what you would do, but you really have no idea. Like I thought I knew what I was doing. I really had no clue.
Yeah, it's so much stuff too. Like those were like the old school ones, like T Nation and Elite FTS. Like
Yeah.
those were pivotal, like coming up. And then like when YouTube started too, and seeing like some of the Cal Strength videos, like the Penlay videos, like all that stuff. Like I remember sitting in the office, like as an intern and as a GA, just scouring that dial-up internet just to like find everything I possibly could. Because you're right, like your lens is small and then you only know what you know. Like you start reaching out and you like peel the onion somewhere else, and then you realize there's a whole different world of what other people are doing just down the street, or what the elite powerlifters are doing like over at West Side. Like there's so much involved in strength conditioning, and you feel like you're such a novice. Like now over the course of your career, you've been at so many different stops, you've seen so many different like programs, different conferences, like different ways to kind of execute like the same goal and mission. Like obviously like be as successful as possible, prepare your athletes, like win a national championship, get to bowl games and everything. Like how important is like continuing education? How important is it for you to like kind of keep that reference in mind and almost filter all the noise, because there's so much information, even more so now. How do you filter what's actually important, and then before you actually like implement it with your athletes, with your team? There's got to be a process of how you take what's good and then get rid of what's bad.
Yeah, I think the internet, social media is a gift and a curse, right? There's so much information out there, like you hit on, and you do kind of have to filter out good from the bad. And then there's a lot of stuff that is awesome that people are doing. But I kind of look at it from the lens of, okay, logistically, can we implement this in a large team setting with 115 guys where, we might have run groups of 60 guys or a lift group with 40, 50 guys. So there are a lot of really good ideas, but, how can you implement it in your setting? Um, I think you really have to be. I always looked at it like I have to be aggressive in my continuing education. I heard Buddy Morris say that information doubles every 2 years in this industry, right? You just like I think about stuff that I was doing a year ago or 6 months ago that I kind of shake my head at, like, man, we shouldn't have been doing that. We should have been doing this, right? So think about how that evolves over a 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year span. Um, you really have to take a deep dive and really analyze what you're doing, and trying to see what people are doing out there and find the best practice. I think if you limit your understanding and limit your knowledge, you're limiting, what you can do for your athletes. So I always try to be aggressive in our continuing education and just trying to continue to grow and evolve and learn from the best people out there.
Yeah, you're right. Like some of the advancements with technology and information like seem to just be never ending, and there's an abundance of it all the time. But like on the flip side of that, I've noticed because like sometimes I've had to like leave recently and like go off for like different extended periods of time for like military training, and I come back and everything's still kind of like chugging along. But that's been the one thing that's been the most difficult to kind of catch back up on was like, oh, what has actually changed like in the profession on the front? Like how you actually coach the athletes and like what you're kind of doing is very similar, but there's always so many more changes like on the continuing education side that like I have to figure out like, oh, what did I miss when I was like not here? And you're right too. Like there's got to be a filter for it. But I think you touched on one thing that's most important that is probably not like the sexy or cool thing that people like to talk about when it comes to implementing things is like the logistics of everything. Like you're set and setting how many athletes are doing it, the timing of all the stuff that's going on. Um, because anybody can look at a program and try to implement it, but if it doesn't fit your situation, like why are you going to fit this like square into a round peg? So what touching on some of the stuff that like is your bread and butter when it comes to like speed development, how do you like first get that like take a step back? How do you assess the team you're working with before you start implementing things so that you understand what the setting is before you start to like put your philosophy and your training program within them?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think when you come in, every situation's a little different, right? Like coming in Ole Miss, you know, I got there around beginning, middle of January. They had just finished playing the week prior. So, whereas a lot of teams have been off for a month, right? So when you're getting back into the swing of things, training wise, like right off the bat, that's different. Okay. You're training guys who, were playing in a football game 10 days ago, as opposed to, and then you have other guys who were getting out of the portal who haven't played in a month and a half, right? Then you got other guys who are coming off return to play scenarios where they haven't played in 5 months. So, you try to look at the big picture, but then you also have to look at it individually with kind of different groups within your team. But I think stepping into a new setting, number one, just trying to evaluate logistics. So, okay, how big are the group sizes? What's our schedule? Like, first off, are we a morning team? Are we an afternoon team? How many groups are we going to have? Because that's going to dictate some things, right? Like there are certain things you can do in a group of 20 that you can't do in a group of 60, right? So, all right, what's our schedule? How big are our groups? When are we training? And then you start to dive into, okay, uh, let's look at the athletes we're working with, right? Like, what did the previous staff do, right? Because our situation was a little unique because there was a coaching change, but our head coach was already on staff, so um, there was some familiar faces, there was some new faces, right? Some things were going to stay the same, some things were going to be different, right? The strength staff, 4 out of the 5 of us were new, right? So we're trying to evaluate, okay, what was the old staff doing? Not critiquing so much, just getting an understanding of like, For example, if you come in and you want to do a lot of max velocity and top end work, well, if the previous staff didn't do a ton of that, you got to be careful with your dosages, right? Not saying what we're doing is right or wrong or what they were doing was right or wrong. It's just different, right? So we want to understand, well, what's brand new to these guys? Okay, what are they used to? What don't like if you inherit a program that was a big Olympic lifting program, okay, well, you're getting pretty good Olympic lifters. I may not take as much time on the technical end teaching that. If you're inheriting a program that didn't do a lot of Olympic lifting, you need to take that into account. Like some guys have never caught a clean, some guys have never done a snatch, right? So if you say, split jerk, guys aren't going to know what you're talking about, right? So just little things like that, understanding the logistics, then understanding the group you're working with, what was done in the past, and how can we implement things moving forward. And then you start taking into account, guys on an individual basis. Okay, this guy's really strong. He might need more speed work. Okay, this guy's really fast, but doesn't really have the relative strength. All right, this guy's coming off previous hamstring strain. All right, this guy's coming off, an ACL and a shoulder in high school. So you start profiling guys individually. You start looking at position groups and what we need to do based off each guy and what type of offense or defense we're running. You start to get to know the coaches better and what they want to see, right? So there's a lot of things to evaluate. I think, like I said, every situation is a little different. You can't just roll out the program you did at a previous stop and copy and paste because the setting's different, the coaches are different, the players are different. So I think you need to always tweak it a little bit and kind of meet guys where they are to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think one of the most important things you said too, and I've noticed this a lot, like you could probably copy and paste like a lot of like your traditional weight room like strength training a lot more so than you could like equipment aside, size aside, like than you can like your speed development stuff, just because the intensity of the dosage, like what the focus was with the previous staff or like what that team was doing after the turnover because strength like the strength training stuff like doesn't really differ too much. Like we kind of know like what the meat and potatoes are going to look like. Maybe there's a different philosophy or there's a little bit of different stuff like what type of season we're in, but like the speed development stuff like I know we're getting more to it, I think, with technology and then coaches being more involved when it comes to the field and maybe practice and like evaluating and assessing like what game speed looks like, what player load looks like from a game and try to mimic that in practice. I think we're getting a lot closer to that high performance model, especially with bigger programs that have a full staff. But it didn't seem like it was that way like years ago or like when we first started like in the profession. So how do you kind of now like integrate yourself a little bit more with the staff? Like you have the assessment that you've kind of worked with. You've seen what the team was doing previously. You kind of know how the athletes are responding to like the first couple of weeks you've been working with them. How do you kind of now try to figure out what the coaches are looking for from your speed sessions? And then like same thing, try to get them up to speed on what the language is and like how you want to dose it, or maybe see exactly what their expectations of you as a strength coach are when it comes to the speed development. Because some of them might be, hey, we'll handle most of the stuff, and then really you just got to sit back and kind of like see if you got to cut back the weight room because they overcooked them or they're not actually getting the stimulus that you need. So you got to run them on the back end. Well, how does that process kind of go with you and the rest of the staff working with the actual football coaches?
Yeah, it's different now than it's ever been because the way the rules are set up, it used to be, hey, the strength staff, you guys got them for 8 weeks, and we'll see you when spring ball starts. And then in the summer, it's like, hey, you guys got them for 8 weeks, and then we'll see you in August, right? And the football coaches, yeah, they'd pop in, but they weren't really around. They didn't have much hands-on work with the athletes other than like voluntary meetings and stuff like that. Now it's different. You can do a lot more skill work in the off season with the coaches, right? There's still some rules you got to work through, but they can be a lot more hands-on now. So we have to take that into account. Again, it goes back to logistics and scheduling. Like, all right, well, how many days a week do we want to do football work? What does that look like? Right? Because we need to probably periodize that out. Um, are you guys going to be on the field 2 days with them? Is it going to be 3 days? How long are you meeting with them? Right? Like, what's the total time on feet got to be? Right? Like, because if their running volume goes up on the football side, like ours probably needs to come down. Like, if they both go up, well, we might have an issue somewhere. So taking all that into account, logistically, scheduling wise, how many times a week they want to be on the field versus us, and making sure that's all synced up because it's all stress, right? It's all volume and intensity, no matter where you get it from. So it all needs to be taken into account. Then I would start to look at, okay, well, what type of offense are we running? Like what is our offensive coordinator's philosophy? What is our defensive coordinator's philosophy? What is our special teams coordinator's philosophy? Are we an up-tempo team? Right? Are we more of a traditional offense that's going to huddle in between each place? Because that's going to change things. That might change how we condition. How do you use your tight ends? Are they more like wideouts or are they on the line of scrimmage blocking a ton? How do we use our linebackers? What type of defense are we running? Do we have five DBs on the field? Like is nickel our base package? Like what do our rush ends do? Are they more like traditional D linemen or do we need to train them more like linebackers? So I think understanding the philosophy and the scheme of the coaches, and then understanding your personnel. Like we have a running quarterback, right, who's a dual threat. Like that changes the way we train him a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So understanding the coaches, understanding the scheme, understanding the personnel, and then figuring out how can we marry the football world and the strength and conditioning world because we're all after the same thing, right? We want to keep these dudes healthy and enhance performance so that we can win games. But just being on the same page, communicating with them, it sounds corny, but it really just comes back to simple communication and getting on the same page every day with those guys on what we're doing and where we want to go so that we're taking care of our athletes.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the communication is crucial. And with the new rule changes, like you mentioned too, it's less so of like, hey, football is a predominary during the season and like strength conditioning is just completely like third place, like way in the back. And then how it was before, like strength conditioning was only like the only thing happening during like those summer periods, that off-season period where the coaches were gone recruiting. Now it's like a neck and neck race, like where you, like you said, you're married, you're balanced together a little bit more. You're always communicating because you're after the same goal. And if one of you overcooks them, like you both can't be like double dipping and you're just gonna burn out the players. With all that stuff in mind, and like you're talking about speed work and then like blending that with practice and kind of just full stress and development of these players, like as it relates to like field work and actual like conditioning, speed, agility work on the field, like from a sports performance side of it, what do you think like for maybe young coaches or coaches that are starting to get a little bit more ability and like time to actually get on the field and start working with their programs like this? What do you think the biggest thing they're missing when it comes to like taking over a program's speed and agility and like conditioning work? What's the one thing that like you feel they're maybe ill prepared for or people kind of miss the boat on first off?
Yeah, I think when you look at speed development, I kind of look at it in three components, right? There's linear speed, acceleration, max velocity, and even within those, there's subcomponents, early acceleration, transitional acceleration, late acceleration, right? Then there's the second component would be multi-directional speed, right? Uh, your curved linear running, maneuverability, change of direction, agility, deceleration, right? Linear speed is very sexy, like, right? Like everybody wants to post miles per hour and what guys run their 40 and whatnot. But the game is really a multi-directional game. There's going to be multiple changes of direction typically on every single play. Football is a game of acceleration and deceleration, stop, start, change direction. So that multi-directional piece really becomes paramount. And then the third component would be enduring speed or conditioning, right? The ability to withstand those high outputs, late in drives, late in games, developing that work capacity to continue to put out those high velocity outputs. So that's kind of how I think about it in three phases. Some programs all three are super important. And depending on where you're at in the year, some may become more important than others, right? Like earlier in the off season, we want to work general to specific, right? So earlier in the off season, we're a little more general, right? The closer we get to football, the more your training needs to look like football, right? So like in the winter, I'm going to emphasize more absolute speed and high quality speed work as opposed to the summer. The speed work doesn't go away. It never goes away. It's always present, but we may emphasize conditioning a little more because we need to get our athletes used to those high volumes that they're going to see in training camp, right? So all three components are important. I think the art of training is understanding when to emphasize some and when to pull others back, right? Like we talked about before, if we're on the field doing football work with the coaches 3, 4 days a week, maybe I'm not doing a ton of multi-directional work because they're getting that from football, right? So you need to watch practice and understand what's going on during the game that's taking care of those qualities. I always look at like, what are they not getting? Okay, so then what can we dose in there? Football takes care of this, we'll do that, right? So I think it's a little bit of a juggling act, and it takes time to understand where you need to emphasize certain qualities more so than others. But and that's where sports science comes in and um, using catapult and GPS technology can be a major benefit because it gives us the answers to the test. It gives us an objective view on what's going on, right? We can look at a practice or look at a session and know we got on average 8 high decels, or our skill guys ran on average 6,000 yards, or we thought we were going to get a ton of high speed yards, but we actually didn't. So maybe we need to throw more in on the back end. So I just think it comes down to juggling those qualities, knowing when to push the envelope and knowing when to pull back in some areas.
No, that's great. Yeah, talking about like the periodization strategy when it comes to like speed development and making sure that it's complemented with what's happening on the field. Because as much as we'd like to say it, like now with all the rule changes and stuff, I think strength coaches have to be even in the off season now, more so in the off season than I think it was before, because football is still involved, like skill development is still involved. Like you almost have to be a little bit more reactive because football is going to take the precedence when it comes down to it. And then you got to make sure that that cup doesn't get overfilled, but you're hitting the other qualities that might not be hitting the right threshold. But like you said, technology and everything else kind of helps complement the coach's eye to like say, hey, this is how we run, this is how our game speed looks like, this is what practice looks like, what games look like. If we're not hitting that threshold, we know exactly what we need to do to like top it off on our end of things. So I know working at so many different places, you've had different resources, you've had different like people on staff that have kind of like maybe took the lead on some things or help with the sports science nutrition side. Like how important is it for you guys in the strength department to kind of work in conjunction with those sports scientists and for them to kind of get up to speed a little bit with like not only how football is operating, but like what you guys are doing to complement so you guys get the same sort of printout and dashboard of this is what's happening at practice, like what are you guys doing? Like how do you kind of integrate them within your guys' program?
Yeah, I think sports science is um, very misunderstood. Really, what is sports science? Sports science is using data to drive player health and performance. It's using data to ask better questions and make better decisions when it comes to your team. People have been doing sports science for 100 years, right? You use it used to just be used as a stopwatch, right? And now we're fortunate enough to have a ton of tech at our disposal. Um, I think, like we talked about, it's so important to have a good plan, but then it's also really important to be able to adapt on the fly because there's always going to be some things that need to be changed and need to be tweaked as you go. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's super important that everyone's on the same page, right? Like if you look at an organization, you have strength and conditioning, sports medicine, sports science, sports nutrition, sports psychology. You have the sports staff, you have admin, you have equipment, right? And we all need to be on the same page and we all need to be communicating and integrated together and have an athlete-centered approach. So it goes back to little things like just communicating and being on the same page on a daily basis. But yeah, it's an integral part of what we do. Zach Witherspoon, our sports scientist, does a phenomenal job getting us objective data every day, looking at our external loads from Catapult, looking at our internal loads from our questionnaires and seeing, where do we need to make changes? Can we stick to the plan? Where do adjustments need to be made so that we can reach our goals that we have every week from a volume and intensity standpoint?
I like it. Yeah, it's great to have kind of someone that spearheads that and then understands what's going on within all those departments so that they can kind of give a better product and a clean cut one that's easily decipherable for everybody on the staff. I know you're kind of going through a little bit of the sports science stuff right now, working on your PhD in that specific realm too. Like how much have you seen like over the course of your work that is like directly applicable to like being a strength coach? Like, because we've seen at some places it's very well blended together, and then in your current situation, like you're on the sports performance side and you already have a sports scientist that's directly working with that, but some people are going to be wearing both hats. How important is it for you to kind of like learn that side and kind of get a better understanding so that you can apply it more to the sports performance strength conditioning side of things?
Yeah, I always looked at it as, as a strength coach, I want to understand everyone's world, right? I'm a little like I'm a little messed up. I don't like anyone knowing more about me than anything. So I try to learn everyone's world a little bit, but I want to know enough about nutrition to have an intelligent conversation with the dietitian. And I want to understand sports medicine and return to play enough to have an intelligent conversation with our PT or our doc or our athletic trainer, right? So I want to understand sports science to have those conversations with our sports scientist because again, we're all after the same thing, right? We're trying to mitigate injury risk and enhance performance so that we can win games and do what's best for the athlete. So I kind of look at it like it's all one and the same, right? It's all part of the comprehensive, athlete scope. So I think I probably look at it a little differently because I have had to wear multiple hats. At some places you might not have a full-time sports scientist, and at a lot of places, I think each one of the strength coaches divvies up the sports science duties. So I've ran catapult, I've ran force plates, like the 1080 is kind of my baby at Ole Miss. That's probably the bulk of my sports science duties, so to speak. But I'm looking at catapult reports every day. I'm looking at force plate reports every day. I share an office with our sports scientists, so we're always bouncing ideas off of each other. That world is always super intriguing to me because it's very objective, right? Like I want to know what does a game look like for a wide receiver because then that makes my job easier in preparing that wide receiver for that game. right? Once we know where we're going, then we could figure out the roadmap on how to get there and how to progress volume and intensity. So I also think people sometimes have the wrong perception of sports science. They think of sports scientists with a lab coat on, somewhere hooking a guy up doing a VO2 max test. Yeah, that's sports science, sure. But I think about like I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of good sports scientists and understand how to use the data um, and how to really be an applied sports scientist, right? And understand how it can help us. Because I look at it like as a weapon, right? We need to understand how to use it to our benefit.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Like just to kind of figure out all those things and to peel back and see exactly like what the reality of it is like in the sports situation and like what that person's role is. Like I think some people have that same preconceived notion that they're just mixing up medicine. They're kind of just bebopping numbers in the background and then they spit out something long and you have no idea how to read it. But the sports scientists that are really good at their job, like speak the language of the sport coach, can also go have a similar conversation with the athletic trainer, but speak their verbiage with them, and it can be the same report that's coming out. But everybody that's on the staff that's taking that information is that wants that data for a different reason. And their ability to kind of be a linguist and speak everyone's language with having the same printout and the same kind of metrics, like that's the mark of someone that kind of helps with that communication because that's valuable information for rehab setting, for practice planning, for monitoring stress and intensity and volume for a strength coach. So that's awesome. Hey, I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit of like football strength conditioning and like what that kind of career progression looks like. Because I mean, everybody's career is unique. Everyone's a little bit different. Like sometimes in the profession, like you're bouncing around, moving all the time. Sometimes you're in one place. Sometimes moves are forced in a way, and sometimes they're on your own accord, kind of working your way around. But for coaches that are kind of looking into that like Division I, like Power Four football strength conditioning profession, like speak a little bit like on how kind of your career has gone along, just kind of peek behind the curtain so that I think young coaches need to realize like what they're getting into because we talk about coaches getting burnt out a lot, and I think it's because they want something that they don't really fully grasp, like what the requirement is and what you're going to sacrifice in order to get to that point. So touch on a little bit of your career, like whatever you feel like sharing, and like what's been kind of important for you to get to your current role.
Yeah. I think, and we have these conversations with our interns a lot and young coaches on career progressions. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What are your goals? I think long term, if you want to progress as far as you can in the field of college strength and conditioning, professional strength and conditioning, specifically in football, but also in Olympic sports, um, if that's a route you want to go, you need to understand that you're probably going to have to move a lot. I think as a young coach, a lot of times guys make the decision, hey, man, I'm from Louisiana. I don't want to leave Louisiana. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But just understand in the college world, you're limiting yourself a little bit because there's only so many universities in Louisiana, right? Whereas when I was coming up, I was kind of willing to go wherever. So that expanded my opportunities, right? So I think that's a real important decision early on. Like, do you want to move a lot? And a lot of people don't. And by the way, they're probably right to not want to move a lot. Moving's not fun. You know what I'm saying? Like I've really enjoyed getting to live different places and getting to experience the new things. But it is a lot and it can be hectic at times. I've lived in 10 different states, like that's not for everybody, right? Like people tell you like if you're going to coach, you better build your house on wheels, so that's just something to take into account. um it can be difficult at times. I think one thing that's frustrating, and again, it needs to be understood, is your job is tied to the head football coach, right? So if you're not having success on the field, you could be the best strength and conditioning coach on planet Earth. You're probably going to get fired, right? So I've been fired 4 times. I don't really think I ever did a poor job at those places. We just didn't win enough on the field as an organization. So the head coach got fired, new head coach comes in, they clean house. That's how it goes, right? And that's fine. I knew that going in. But if you're a young coach and you don't understand that, I think it's super important to know on the front end. Do you want to move a lot, right? Are you okay with your future being sometimes undetermined? And are those things you're willing to go through?
Yeah, that I think that's one of the hard things, like your future being undetermined or be determined by someone else's doing, like at the end of the day, because like you're tied to the contract usually of the head coach. Like there are some opportunities where you can like maybe interview for a job where a new coach comes in. But like I talked to Coach Connolly about it too, and he said he's like, this is very rare when this happens. Like you actually get retained and you still have to go through the process because coaches have their own guy. Like they want to bring someone with them. They have someone that has a similar philosophy, someone maybe that's worked with them in the past, or they're poaching other strength coaches like off of the five staff. Like uh, you how important strength conditioning is like in collegiate athletics has been like a microscope on it even more so now, and it's valued even more that head football coaches are willing to make that like their second, third, or fourth hire like right off the get-go. So they want who they want because their performance and working with them 52 weeks out of the year is what's actually going to help with that wins and loss category. You can't directly tie it to it, but we all know like having a bigger, faster, more physical team that's like disciplined and prepared for what you want to do and how you want to play on the field, like pays huge dividends when you have someone that's leading the weight room and has years of staff in there that's doing everything from a culture aspect too that you want to execute on the field. That's great that you guys are having those conversations with those young interns because I think a lot of times early in their career they kind of get enamored by where they're at and they're so focused on like being the best intern and like you said we talked about before all this information, it's a plethora of information coming down and they feel like they know nothing and they're working as long as possible that they don't really understand that like when things slow down and you get a little bit more experience in the career and it doesn't take you 10 hours to program a single day's lift because you have a little bit more experience and knowledge that now you have to like sit back in your third job and be like, do I really want to keep moving all this time? Like, do I want to do this? Because you definitely got me beat. I got 9 jobs in 4 states. So you got me beat for a lot of stuff. And but I mean, it's kudos to you because like you know exactly what you want and you're taking opportunities and you didn't limit those opportunities by like wanting to be in an area. You just want to get to the best place and coach people to the best of your ability. So definitely great conversations you're having for those individuals that will say they want to be in the profession, but maybe don't know how much skin you have to have in the game to actually make it in the profession. Hey, so talking about all this stuff, like you've been an assistant director at all these different places. Like I know a lot of coaches like want to be directors at some point in time, but you already are like in a lot of ways directing like certain aspects of the program, certain things within the program itself. How much different do you view that head role versus the assistant role? And then like how do you really like make yourself the best assistant as possible to kind of either set yourself up in the future if a director position becomes available, or you just kind of want to be the best like person on that staff.
Yeah, I think It's a good question. I've turned down a couple director roles over the years. Just didn't feel like they were the right move for me at the time. I think it's about being aligned with the right people, right? I'm fortunate enough to be in a position here where our head strength and conditioning coach, Paul Constantine, empowers us a ton. He told me going in, hey man, you're gonna program the speed work on the field. You're gonna program for the skill guys in the weight room. And he said that, but I didn't know if it was like, hey, you got carte blanche. And when I got here, he's like, all right, what are we doing tomorrow on the field? Hey, what are the skill guys doing in the weight room? So he's been great, really letting us have a ton of autonomy as assistants. Where if you watch one of our lifts, there's really three different lifts going on, really four, where our skill guys are doing one thing, our mids are doing another thing, our line is doing another thing, and then our QB specs return to player on another plan. So each assistant has their group, and they're rocking and rolling with them, and we're kind of the head strength coach in each one of our areas. So that's been great to be able to link up with a guy like Paul and have him give us that autonomy has been great. Obviously, I definitely want to be a head strength coach one day. It's just gotta be the right spot, and obviously there's a lot of time in. You got to get a little lucky at some point. But it sounds corny, right? But like I just I try to be the best assistant strength coach I can possibly be, right? So wherever I'm at, I just try to do a good enough job where I feel confident putting my name on it, on the program, and putting my stamp on what we're doing, and feel confident that we're doing things at a high level.
No, it's great to have a boss that gives you the autonomy and freedom and respects you and says, "Hey, listen, I hired you to do a job. Like I want you to do it without like being handcuffed to kind of do these certain things. Like you have the full freedom to do it your way." Like that's super empowering. And like I think a lot of times when like the coaches I know that I've worked for on the Olympic side, when they've given me that and they've like gave me like constructive feedback and kind of help guide me rather than tell me what to do. Like you want to work better, you want to work harder for that person, like because you feel indebted to like that opportunity that you're given. And yeah, like you said, you want to be the best assistant you can possibly be. And again, everybody on staff, you included, is out for the same goals and success for the team. So like for one person on staff to just sewer it because they think that they can do something better, like it serves no purpose. But I do like it's interesting to hear you say the same thing because you've been at so many spots and like you said, you didn't limit your opportunities. You wanted to go out and take the best situation no matter where it was. But you're still deliberate with those decisions, like turning down director roles, because I think a lot of people like looking at your resume and then all your stops along the way would be like, oh, he would definitely jump on the first director role he got. Like, oh, maybe he just hasn't had the opportunity yet. But to hear you say that and be like, hey, it has to be the right fit, best the situation, the philosophies have to mesh. I think some coaches too don't realize that either. There's only so many head jobs like FBS, like Division I football, like some people would jump on it right away, but you could be gone that first year as well if like you and the head coach don't mesh. And that's a relationship, even the OCs and DC. I've talked to friends, I've seen everybody can sometimes see it clearly on college game day too. Like when there's animosity between like those four guys, like the head coach, OC, DC, the strength coach, uh, it doesn't look good. And usually the strength coach is on the back end of those deals if there's a little bit of miscommunication from everything, just to put it nicely. Um, but I guess when it comes to that stuff, like how do you kind of stay prepared for that situation? Is it come innately because you're always trying to be the best assistant, you're working on your continuing education, like you're kind of waiting for the best opportunity to kind of be handed to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? Like you're always kind of loosely preparing for those calls and those opportunities. And I think Um, you know, every situation you're in, I know the way my brain works. Like I'm kind of thinking, all right, what would I do here, or how would I operate this? So you're kind of always loosely preparing, and then you have things that you'll put on paper. Hey, when I get an opportunity, I want to do X, Y, and Z. So I think you have to map those things out. Even before those opportunities come, so that when they do come and you do get that call, you're not scrambling, right? Even though every situation is different, I think having that game plan in your head um, definitely helps.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it too. And then from all your experience in different stops like along the way too, that's different systems, different head coaches, different universities, conferences, settings that you have the opportunity to kind of not be necessarily the one on the hook, even though sometimes like everybody gets pulled out and they clean your house, but you still get to see how people react during those situations and then kind of gameplay it, like you said, in your head, how you would maybe do it differently if you were kind of in that head seat. So switching gears a little bit too, like after college football, after like all your time, like kind of on the gridiron and playing, like what has training kind of shifted? How have you shifted focus to still kind of keep yourself an athlete, still stay involved, and under the barbell now as a coach?
Yeah, I think you got to walk the walk to a certain extent, right? Uh, it's shifted for sure. Like I'm 36 now, so training is yeah, it's pretty similar to how I've trained forever, but I do think I'm less aggressive in my training now. Um, the older you get, you make some business decisions on certain things. But I always, look at it as a coach. I want to be able to demo everything we do in the weight room and on the field, right? I think the athletes have to look at you like you at least look like you could do these things, right? For them to have that buy-in. And then a lot of the training is, experimenting with things I want to implement with the team, but I want to kind of go through myself just to feel it out and say, hey, you know what, 8 reps is way too much. Like, let's bump it down to 6, or hey, we could probably do 4 sets of this. So you want to experiment with those things so that when you roll them out with the athletes, you've done them yourself, so you're not flying blind. Because I have made that mistake in the past as well. But I would say my own training style now is probably like a power building type approach, right? You want to do some high volume stuff to look good, but I still want to be able to be strong and be able to move weight, if you need to. So it's kind of a blend in that regard. And then I think we all want to look good and feel good. Like number one, you want to be in good health, right? So you do things that are going to help your longevity, and then you want to feel good. And man, a lot of the times now, I'm training more for my mentals more so than anything. I just feel better. I'm in a better mood after I train, right? So I think you're doing what's best for your longevity long term. And then I think we all make judgments on people and observations, right? And I never wanted anyone to look at me like you want to look like a strength coach. Like that's part of it. Perception is reality, right? So someone was, oh, he's a strength coach. Oh, yeah, that makes sense, right? You don't ever want people like you're a strength coach, So you want to look the part to a certain extent.
Yeah, look at the part makes it actually does. Like passing the eye test, like as much as we want to say it doesn't affect it, there's a lot of places like that'll make or break like whether or not potentially you get hired. Like if I go into a certain setting and I don't look like I've ever done anything in my life, like some people are just gonna be like, what do they know? And like you don't sometimes you don't even get the opportunity to like explain yourself. So like I'd rather just nip that in the bud and like obviously like train. And that's a great point too. Like I think a lot of coaches I've seen and talked to like get stuck in that area. I'm the same age as you too. So like you're like I want to keep doing everything I'm normally doing and like training how I'm training, but I'm gonna steal business decisions all the time because like there are some times where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna put myself in a real bad spot if I do this, and coaching is going to be very difficult for the next couple of days, or I'm not going to be able to walk very well. Um, I'm not training for anything specifically like that. So let's be smart with it too, because I think good health is super important. We talk about like a lot of strength coaches like want to look big, jacked. You want to look good, but feeling good and like maybe sometimes leaving the weight room not crippled is the best thing for you. Because I mean, we talked about stress on the field when it comes to speed development. Like the stress for a strength coach being on your feet for that long of the day, programming, kind of be mentally locked in, having conversations with like multiple athletes that are like in depth, like that is a different kind of wear and tear that I think we brush off, but does play a factor when you're talking about overall stress and like just how long of a day you could end up having to put on top of programming, meetings, like film, all this other stuff that kind of gets thrown on the table for you. So I like that. That's a great point for sure. Hey, so I know you kind of touched on it with just being at the level that you guys are at too, and like being in the SEC and like how different that is of like a level when it comes to like athleticism and everything. Have you encountered any of those like players that like maybe have a little bit of pushback when it comes to training, and then now that you have all this background and you're working the program, you're experimenting yourself, like these conversations are a little bit easier to have. Like how quickly are you able to kind of like nip that stuff in the bud, or maybe like how do you approach those conversations with like a stud athlete on the field, but maybe like needs a lot of help in the weight room to kind of accentuate their game? Like, how does that happen, or is it just always case by case?
There's a good book called Verbal Judo. The guy who wrote the book was a cop, and he used to do hostage situations, and he always a lot of his conversations were real like life or death situations, and he had to talk guys out of making poor decisions, and a lot of it was he would frame it to, okay, where's this guy's head at? What does he want to hear? Does he not want to hear? So you kind of put yourself in their shoes, right? So I think I've kind of used that a little bit with athletes who, I think when you're younger in your career, you think everyone's like you. Everyone loves lifting weights, loves doing sprints, loves that aspect of it. The reality is these guys are not at these universities or these organizations because they love lifting weights. They're there because they love football and they want to play football. They want to play basketball, whatever the sport is, but they don't all love the weight room. They don't all love the off season, and that's okay. Not everybody's going to be a strength coach when they're done with their athletic career, right? So you have to meet guys where they are. And I think the conversation and the education on the front end becomes paramount in helping them understand why we're doing what we're doing. I love when guys say, what are we doing this? What is this for? And then you have that conversation. They go, okay, that makes sense. And then they're all in. But if those conversations don't happen, they think you're just torturing them, right? And I think maybe they had a bad experience in the past with their strength coach or their high school coach or whoever it was, where they think they're in here lifting weights just because we're just trying to put them through the ringer just to make them do some hard stuff, and it's not really helping them, right? Or they think, well, I've gotten here without ever really buying into the weight room or buying into speed work, so why should I change what I'm doing? So I try to always manipulate my message towards what I know motivates them. For some guys, it's money. For some guys, it's buying their mom a house. For some guys, it's going to the National Football League. For some guys, it's buying a new car. For some guys, it's just competitive, and I just want to beat that guy, right? So, how can you shift your message to get through to that athlete? That's the art of coaching, right? Because not everyone's going to want to bench press just because you tell them to bench press. There are guys like that. They're going to do whatever you say. They're not going to question it, and they're going to work their ass off. And then there's other guys where you're going to have to kind of work with and help them understand why you're doing what you're doing, or you're not going to get good buy-in with them. So I think I've learned how to meet athletes where they are over the years, and that not at every single athlete's going to respond to the same type of coaching. Some people are motivated by certain things, some people are motivated by others. If you understand that and understand their why, that's probably going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, that's great. Understanding that why I think is why we talk about it's important to understand your players and not only just meet them where they're at when it comes to programming, but like their demeanor, like what they like their interests are and like getting to know them a lot more because all that stuff you talk about with shifting the message specifically to that individual player. Like you're not gonna really know that just by like, oh, what this guy's max is or like what his deficiencies in movement are. Like all that stuff like comes into part, it comes into play when it comes to the training aspect, but like actually understanding them, like knowing their name, like knowing like where they're from, like I said, interests and stuff like that. That's where you start to shift the message and figure out like what really truly motivates them and like how to like keep them focused and keep them engaged on what's going on. When it comes to like the why and the education stuff, like you said that so many players like really want to know like why they're doing stuff so they don't feel like they're just getting beat down all the time. And with all the stuff on social media, they can see what the rival down the street is doing. They can see what the NFL players they look up to or what those teams are doing daily because they've got camera crews and stuff following them all the time. Are you kind of proactive when it comes to that education piece, or do you kind of like maybe wait till someone says something, bring your position guys together, kind of explain it to everybody so they're on the same page? Because I think one of the difficult ones is you don't want to be too preachy and tell them more than they really are willing to know. You don't want to miss an opportunity to kind of educate them, but you also like at the same time, the amount of time you have is valuable. So is it worth getting all the guys together to like give the same message so you don't have to repeat the message? How do you kind of like proactively or like pragmatically take that approach when it comes to like explaining the why and educating them without just dumping like verbal diarrhea on them?
Yeah, I think you have to find a balance. To me, I'll give them a couple quick hitters on the front end. Hey guys, we're doing this drill so we can get faster coming in and out of our cuts. We're going to create more separation. You're going to catch more balls, score more touchdowns, make more money. You good with that? Okay, great. Let's roll. Then on the back end, there might be one guy who's like, hey, why did we do it like this? Why don't we do it like that? Then that's a longer conversation and you give that kid a little more of a comprehensive answer, right? But number one, I don't have enough time to go through in super granular detail on each drill. And also, most guys don't care, right? So I'll give them a couple quick hitters on the front end, and then there are those one-off conversations that'll happen during training or after training or on an off day about a little more of the why on what we're doing. But I try to give them a couple quick hitters on the front end and then roll. And then if there's a follow-up question, great, let's talk about this some more. Because I could talk about this stuff all day, right? Like we enjoy talking about this as strength coaches. The athletes, some of them like hearing the why, some of them don't really care. Just tell me what I got to do and where I got to go, right? And that's fine too.
Yeah, you're right. Some of them are just like, hey, just put it on the board. Like I know how to do it. Just leave me be. I'll execute it. You get some of those and you get some that are like kind of that mini strength coach in training, or you get some of the other ones that want to help like deliver that message because they're like almost like a mini coach. They're one of those hidden leaders that understand kind of the feel and like demeanor of the room. So you get so many different type of players and being able to cater to each of them and be able to communicate with them and deliver that message like succinctly and quickly, especially with the amount of time and how many players you have and how important every single minute like within that is because like periods are timed out perfectly, training sessions like you only allotted this much amount of time. It becomes so much more important that you're on all the time so that you can maximize that ability and knowing your players like that helps with you that time management as well.
Yeah, and like going back to the continuing education piece, I want to have answers when these guys have questions, right? Like some guys ask really good questions, athletes and coaches. And I want to have answers when they come to me. And if I don't, I'll tell them, you know what? I don't know. I'll get back to you. Right. But like I want to have those answers on the back end. And like I think guys want to know two things. They want to know, are you a good dude? Do you care about me? Do you have my best interests in mind? And then do you know what the hell you're doing? Right? Like, are you competent? And they could sniff it out real quick, right? Like, you can only fool so many guys. So, again, I'm just trying to get better as a coach, so guys don't look at me like I ain't listening to this dude. He don't even know what he's talking about, right? Because there are guys who will just. I've seen it where guys will just shut off if they sniff coaches out. Like, I'm not listening to this dude.
Yeah, those two things are important. And the amount of time that you're around them, the amount of time that's invested in their development, and how close like you five strength coaches are invested in the team and at practice and at all these different meetings. Like there's no way you're going to be able to fake it that long. Those guys are going to sniff
Right.
out those two things, whether or not you like it or not. Nice. Well, coach, like any good training session, we got to end the show with a finisher. We're gearing up for that summer training. So we got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and back in we got that overtime. You can go rapid fire, or if anything you feel like you need to add a little bit more to it, feel free. But you ready for the first one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession and favorite football player growing up.
The biggest influence, that's tough because I've had a lot of really great mentors, and I've learned from a lot of coaches from afar. You know, I think Aaron Wellman's probably my biggest influence as a coach. I was fortunate enough to share an office with him at Indiana, and just kind of, be a sponge every day and soak up um, his knowledge over the years and just watch him work and the discipline and talking about being aggressive and getting better. I just watched him. This is a guy who's a head strength coach in the NFL, head strength coach in college, and he's still reading, still listening to podcasts, still calling people, still trying to tweak his program and evolve and grow. So I think as an assistant coach, that rubs off on you for sure. My favorite football player growing up was Eddie George. I played running back, and Eddie George and Curtis Martin were probably my two favorites for sure.
All right, nice. There we go. Hey, so when you're not coaching, you're kind of outside the weight room walls. What are some of like maybe your go-to hobbies that keep you recharged or refocused?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of weird because I made my hobbies my career. Like I'm into sports and training. So I like lifting weights and watching sports. But I'll binge watch some shows. I'll get on Netflix or Amazon Prime and binge watch some shows or go to the movies.
You got any go-tos at the moment?
Right now, I'm on Friends and Neighbors. Pretty solid. Pretty solid.
All right, I'll have to check them out. Hey, so when you're not coaching, if you weren't coaching right now and you had to like pick something completely out of the sports realm, like not coaching related, what do you think you might be doing in like an alternate universe right now if it was a career path?
Man, I probably would have been doing like I grew up listening to sports talk radio, like WFAN, Mike and the Mad Dog, ESPN, stuff like that. So I'd probably be like doing a radio show talking about sports or doing a podcast, something along those lines.
Okay, there we go. Hey, so setting up an ideal training day for yourself, what's playing on the speakers and what's your favorite post-training meal after like a heavy training session?
Man, that's a good question. I'd probably go DMX on the speakers, and post-training meal, I'd probably just keep it simple and go Chipotle.
All right, there we go. Hey, so last one I got for you for overtime. What has been either your favorite under the bar memory or favorite coaching memory you've had so far in your career, or just first one that comes to mind?
Man, that's tough. There's been a lot that stand out. Even going back, like man, when I was at Stanford, Oregon was the number two team in the country. We beat Oregon at home, went to Notre Dame, beat Notre Dame. Um, when I was at FIU, we beat Miami. When you're at a place like FIU, you're not supposed to beat Miami. Like those wins stick out. Like when I was even an intern with the Jacksonville Jaguars, we played the Giants Thanksgiving weekend. I'm from New York. I had a bunch of family in town. We beat the Giants, came back and won. So you remember those games. But you really I think just coaching in the SEC and being in the position I'm in now, that's been really, really cool for sure.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it's some of those underdog games are the ones like where you're kind of counted out. Those ones are super memorable, and I mean the atmosphere for some of those games, rivalry games or Thanksgiving Day games, or like ones where you're away from home, like those. Like you can't replicate being on the sideline and it kind of having that roar behind you and everybody's against you, and then to pull it out and to hear a 100,000 people go silent. Uh, it's a different type of shock. So that's awesome. Well, hey, Coach, I really appreciate your time today. I know you got a little bit of time off before things kick in to high gear. So it's been great having you on today. For anybody that's got maybe some follow-up questions for you from the show, or just want to follow along and see what you guys got going on at Ole Miss and follow your career, where can they get a hold of you, and where can they make sure they find you?
Yeah, probably Instagram or Twitter is probably the best spot if you want to just shoot me a DM. It's Matt Gebert 1. I like talking about this stuff. I like talking training, so feel free to reach out. I'm always down to talk shop.
Awesome. Well, Coach, like I said, I appreciate your time today. It's been great talking to you, and best of luck getting ready for this upcoming fall.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.